The following program contains recorded allegations of sexual abuse that some viewers may find disturbing.
So hot, that place, and so sexy. You just get crazy thoughts there.
Harvey Weinstein sat atop Hollywood as one of the most successful and respected movie producers in history. But beneath the money and the fame was a monster, hiding a dark and disturbing secret.
She's good, really good. Good. He's wonderful.
Yeah, she's got a real charisma and a presence
She does.
about her.
She certainly does.
The truth cannot be hidden away forever. And in Hollywood, when the movies end and the credits roll, the reality can be even more terrifying than you could ever imagine.
After I was raped by Weinstein in 2005, I was confused. Why didn't I scream? Why didn't I fight?
He asked me to take my top off. I said I wasn't comfortable. He asked again and again.
He said, name anyone, any actress you can think of, and this is how they made it.
A no is a no, regardless of the circumstances. And I told Harvey no.
After decades of torment and secrecy, his victims are finally getting justice. The court would hear the disturbing accounts of Jessica Mann and Miriam Haley, two individuals who have lived with the shame they have been made to feel responsible for.
We are living in an age when women are no longer willing to suffer in silence. They are going to be courageous. They are going to be empowered, not just in New York, not just in the United States, but I'm feeling it many places around the world. Women are going to speak out and demand justice from those who are sexually preying on them. I can only hope that whatever sentence the court sees fit is long enough for Harvey Weinstein to acknowledge what he's done and to be truly sorry.
I wondered, sir, could you tell me, do you believe all of those women are lying? Do you believe they're lying, sir?
Thank you very much.
The verdict is in. Justice is being served, and this is only the beginning of the reckoning. New York City, January 6, 2020. A frail Harvey Weinstein, fallen from grace, makes his first public appearance in months as he attends the state Supreme Court in Manhattan. Over 90 accusations, yet only 2 women made it to trial. With many cases being beyond the statute of limitations, Weinstein escaped Judgment Day for most of his disgraceful behavior and misconduct.
I thought I was stronger and I hated myself for being weak. That self-hate turned into shame and guilt. Shame that I never should have felt and guilt that was not mine to own. I didn't know that at the time and I didn't realize it for 12 more years. Harvey Weinstein stole a part of my self-worth, treating me like I was nothing, and I became fearful and mistrustful, not only of others, but of myself. These feelings were unbearable to live with, and I pushed back the fear, shame, and guilt to move on with my life, because that's how most of us survive. I was okay, or so I thought, until I read about the brave women speaking out with their stories just like mine. The heartbreak of shame and guilt came flooding back. I knew what those women felt, and I wanted to help them. I knew I had to.
The women who have come forward now, unfortunately for many, for most of them, they've been carrying this around for years, even decades. Hopefully, there's a power in the number of voices who've come forward, that they're able to find the strength and able to get through it because there are other victims, because they're not alone, because they've seen other victims who've walked through it. But I think it's unfortunate that they do have to relive this after, let's say, 30 years, 3 decades.
New York City, 1979. Two brothers, having successfully built a concert promotion business, decide to gamble on a new business venture together. They set up a small independent film distribution company called Miramax.
Harvey thinks that he was in an alternate reality, actually. He thinks he's going to wake up and this is not the real thing.
In just a few short years, Miramax would grow to become one of the biggest players in the entertainment industry, and Harvey and Bob Weinstein would become household names.
Harvey Weinstein has been a mogul in the entertainment industry for decades, and it really started in independent film. And I think that's where a lot of people got to know him and his brother Bob from Miramax, the film company. And especially in the 90s, when independent film was just absolutely everything, they started to get more and more power in Hollywood. Their company was eventually bought by Disney. And of course, that brought them more money, more power. And I think that allure, having a film made by Miramax, made by Disney, was a really big deal.
Harvey Weinstein was someone, he was this kid from Queens, New York, him and his brother. They started off as concert promoters. Harvey always had his plan in place. He wanted to be a huge Hollywood player, and he became that.
Miramax became especially known for their Oscar pushes for films. They were the studio that if you wanted to hold up that golden statue at the end of the season, that you should go to. So they had countless hits, including Pulp Fiction, Shakespeare in Love, and through those, they allowed their actors and actresses to say thank you to the Academy.
I'm one of those kids from Brooklyn and Queens who used to watch the Oscars and root and cheer and had dreams. And I just wanted to dedicate this, as everybody does, mine anyhow, to all those kids out there and tell them to break the rules.
Miramax spearheaded some of the most successful films of their time: Pulp Fiction in 1994, Good Will Hunting in 1997, and Shakespeare in Love in 1998. Their might in the industry was evidential, recognized in their countless Oscars and accolades.
Harvey was never liked. People feared him. People wanted to work with him. People wanted him to put them on screen, to get them an Oscar. And he literally bought Oscars for everybody. No one to this day can explain how Shakespeare in Love beat Saving Private Ryan for Best Academy Award for Best Picture. The reason? Harvey Weinstein.
To be cast in a Miramax movie or a Weinstein Company movie, that's huge. That's big, especially for someone who's just starting out. Harvey was seen as someone who championed these smaller films, more artistic. He was an actor's producer, a director's producer for more refined tastes. So, to be cast in a Miramax movie, to know that Harvey was behind you, it was a great badge of honor in this town. To know that Harvey Weinstein was, pushing you for an award, for an Oscar, you couldn't have asked for a better strategist.
In 2005, Harvey and Bob left Miramax and formed their own company, the Weinstein Company.
Well, Miramax, unfortunately, we don't have the name, but I think with directors like Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, Anthony Minghella, John Madden, Marty Scorsese, all coming with the new company, it's sort of the ongoing business without mom and dad's name. We still own the name Dimension, and if anybody can come up with a better name than the Weinstein Company, we're all ears.
Nothing's better than the Weinstein brothers, so the name is great.
Winning the Best Picture helps make the night go great. And Best Actor didn't hurt, and Best Director didn't hurt that, and Screenplay wasn't bad either. So it was pretty great.
At this point in your career, do these things still surprise you?
I loved it. It's fun. Come on, I've been loving this since you're a kid. This is it's like the World Series for guys, okay?
Harvey seemed unstoppable. But on October 5th, 2017, his empire would come crashing down. The New York Times published a comprehensive investigation exposing a horrific string of sexual predatory behavior and abuse allegations by the most powerful man in Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein. The allegations spanned 3 decades and disclosed instances of indecent exposure, inappropriate touching, non-consensual advances, and rape.
What happened with Harvey, we all knew he was a bully. And bully's putting it lightly. You know, bully sort of encompasses everything now, you know, from, you know, simple name calling to, you know, physical attacks. But he was mean. He was degrading. He had no problems calling someone stupid, dumb, throwing things at people, flipping tables. Everyone knew what he was. This is, again, this is not a surprise. We all knew what a monster he was.
In response to the New York Times article, Mr. Weinstein issued the following statement. I appreciate the way I've behaved with colleagues in the past has caused a lot of pain, and I sincerely apologize for it. Though I'm trying to do better, I know I have a long way to go.
When the New York Times broke the story, it wasn't the first time a news outlet had tried. New York Magazine, New York Times, both had tried in the past to do a piece about Harvey Weinstein and all the rumors. Both times they were scuppered by Harvey's team of legal eagles who threatened and, you know, called up and screamed and pulled out all these reasons why they were going to sue if the stories went public. When the New York Times actually published the piece, I believe that it was their thorough reporting and also the willingness of a respectable actress such as Ashley Judd to go on the record about what had happened to her, which gave it believability and credibility.
Actress Ashley Judd was one of the first women to publicly recount her ordeal. She stated that over 2 decades ago, she met Mr. Weinstein in his suite at the Peninsula Beverly Hills Hotel for what she thought would be a breakfast meeting. Once she arrived, Harvey allegedly pestered her repeatedly for a massage and then attempted to move her into the bathroom so that she could watch him shower. Judd immediately told her agent Michelle Bohan, but was helpless to take any further action.
I first heard the name Zelda as Harvey's assistant about 10 years ago, way before this happened. She had signed an NDA, but she was a friend of a friend, and I had heard through that friend that some very unpalatable things had happened during her time at Miramax, which is why she left. She was not happy, and she was disturbed by a lot of it. And then, of course, you know, you fast forward to the scandal breaking, and Zelda very bravely decided to come forward against the terms of her NDA and speak her truth. And I think what I found most insightful about what Zelda had to say was to try and explain how this happened. You know, everybody can read about this and think, well, why did they go in his hotel room and why did they allow themselves to get in this position? And you can judge and criticize. But what Zelda explained was, look, Harvey regularly did meetings in his hotel room. He had a suite. He always had a suite. So there was a living room. So male and female industry players went up to his room until he took meetings there. Male directors, male agents, they sat in the suite and they took meetings. So for Ashley Judd to go up to his hotel suite was not her doing anything that other people and men hadn't done previously. Harvey took meetings in his room.
There is no place for a gagging order, a non-disclosure agreement around inappropriate, potentially criminal behavior. I mean, it's unethical and immoral on every level.
Zelda also went on to kind of explain that the position he was in, how much power he had, how attractive that was. People wanted his attention. People wanted to take meetings with him. People wanted to be around him. He used, abused, and manipulated this power, but it's undeniable that he had that power. The reason he was able to get away with so much of this is because people were afraid to turn him down. Harvey wants to see you in his hotel suite. Of course you're thinking, maybe I can get a job. Maybe he'll cast me in his next movie. It was a very difficult decision to make. And a lot of actresses who are now speaking out saying that, they went up to his room and he was naked, he was in his bathrobe, he asked for a naked massage, he wanted to watch him shower. We're horrified and shocked. But the hotel room thing, Zelda very, very clearly explains, was something that everybody did. It wasn't just women, but the women, of course, were the ones who were preyed upon.
I would like to thank Harvey Weinstein and everybody at Miramax Films for their undying support of me.
Gwyneth Paltrow says that when she was only 22 years old, that Weinstein invited her to a hotel room for a meeting and then propositioned and sexually harassed her. Paltrow's allegations have become some of the most widespread in Hollywood, where the women have said that Weinstein invited them to a hotel room under the guise of the meeting and then asked them to give him a massage or asked to be able to massage them. That seemed to be his tactic.
I remember Harvey afterwards rolling over onto his back saying, "Don't you feel we're so much closer to each other now?" To which I replied, "No." And no is a no, regardless of the circumstances. And I told Harvey no.
I wanted to show people everywhere that you could cut off the head of power and not just bite at the ankles. I wanted to show that we can topple monsters and giants. Because behind the scenes, they're just bullies, just like bullies on a schoolyard. And we know how to deal with bullies in school, but it doesn't seem to. Once we get into the adult world, we let it happen. But it's really the complicity machine. It's everybody around that made it okay, and it's not okay.
He called me into his office and told me to sit on the couch. He then sat down next to me and proceeded to tell me how things worked in Hollywood. He asked me if I was good. I started to tell him about my training and my acting experience, and he said, "No, I need to know if you're good." He said that if he was going to introduce me around town to directors and producers, he needed to know if I was any good. He had this sly, sleazy smile on his face. And the fact that he was sitting so close to me on this couch, I started to get a sick feeling in my stomach. The next thing I knew, he had unzipped his fly and pulled out his penis. My heart started pounding. My mind started racing. How do I deal with this? How do I get out of this? Am I going to get out of this? How is this happening? He then grabbed my hand and pulled me towards him and forced my hand onto his penis and held it there. I was frozen with fear, trying to remain calm, trying not to freak out because, after all, there was nobody else in the office. I pulled my hand away as casually as possible. He told me that this was how things worked in Hollywood and that all of the actresses that had made it this way. He said, "Name anyone, any actress you can think of, and this is how they made it." He spelled it out for me. He told me that first I would have sex with him, and then he would take me to parties and show me who I needed to sleep with after that. On Monday, following that Friday nightmare with Harvey Weinstein, I resigned from my job. Not long after that, I quit acting. I have told parts of this story to only a very few people over the years. I felt so powerless because he is, after all, very powerful and very well known and very successful. I didn't think anyone would believe me. I was nobody. Why would they?
I had kind of created a safeguard of how I could avoid those situations, and I never was in a hotel room with him alone again. There's a lot of shame around that experience, and then you ask yourself, why did I work for this person after that? Why didn't I see it in the way that the world has seen it now when it happened? I think that the secrecy around it is probably a big part of that. And there are days that I feel really angry and upset, and times when, you feel that that person really is a monster and they deserve whatever is coming to them. But it's also not that, I've found that it's not that helpful for me in terms of my healing and understanding to feel that anger. It doesn't do anything to serve me.
In Hollywood, whenever there's a scandal, everybody talks about redemption and rehab. It kind of goes in that order. They beg for forgiveness and they go to rehab, whether it's for sex, because they got caught cheating, whether it's for drugs, because they got caught doing cocaine, whether it's for whatever it is. They ask for forgiveness and they immediately check into rehab. We saw Harvey Weinstein do the same thing. He gets called out as a rapist, sexual predator, and the next thing you know, he's checking himself into sex rehab. Now, I loved what Emma Thompson said when she sat down with Emily Matalis, the journalist, and said, it's not about sex addiction. That's a different thing. This is about being a sexual predator. And she really very nicely drew the distinction, I think, because it's one thing to kind of try and borrow someone else's disease or illness in order to make your bad behavior seem more palatable. Celebrities time and time again use rehab as a way to redeem themselves in the eyes of the public. It's not acceptable. They need to own up and take responsibility for what they've done. In the case of Harvey Weinstein, initially it looked like he really thought he was going to get away with a quick fix. Go to rehab, it'll blow over. His wife was standing by him. He hired a very powerful top lawyer who was Lisa Bloom, who was famous for representing women. And I think he thought he had it locked down. If you look at his initial statement, he sort of throws out vague accusations against the women who'd come forward. He sort of implies Ashley Judd is mentally ill. He denies ever doing anything that was non-consensual. And I think he thinks he's got it covered. And it wasn't until 5 days later when all the floodgates opened that I think he realized that dozens and dozens and dozens of women started speaking out, that actually there was no way he was going to be able to contain the situation.
The sheer number of people coming forward to share their own experiences at the hands of powerful and dangerous men in Hollywood shocked the world. But to those in the industry, this was nothing more than a long-awaited spotlight, shining light on a dark truth.
The Hollywood casting couch has been around for as long as they've been making movies. This is a dynamic where you have a lot of very powerful men and a lot of very young, beautiful women, and it just has naturally evolved into a very dark and ugly predatory arrangement. Going back all the way to kind of the big studio heads who wielded unprecedented power in Hollywood, these men preyed very frequently on young ingenue starlet actresses. And in fact, one Hollywood mogul even had an office next to his main office where he would, quote, audition starlets every day between 4 and 4:30 p.m. And everybody knew what audition meant. You have very famous stories of young actresses like Shirley Temple, who had an MGM producer expose himself to her when she was just 12 years old. Stories about Louis B. Mayer, who was running the big Hollywood studio at the time, who was basically feeling up Judy Garland every time she would come in. She was a young singer-actress, and he would put his hand on her breasts and say, this is where you sing from, this is how you sing, and he just used it as an excuse to molest her. The stories that have long been a part of Hollywood folklore are dark and ugly, but it's only now, I think, in recent times that people are actually calling these what they are, which is sexual predation and in some cases rape. The Hollywood casting couch really is about power. And you have a lot of very powerful men who are taking advantage of that power. We see it across all industries. You see it in investment banking. You see it in any industry where there are a lot of men in positions of power and women who are not. In the years between something like 2006 and 2017, only 4% of Hollywood directors were female. And 80% of those female directors only ever got to make one movie. The balance of power in Hollywood is massively skewed in favor of men. And anytime you get a group of men that are this powerful and women who are trying to break through, there are always going to be those bad apples who use their position of power in a way to abuse women.
So we've seen other cases in Hollywood, and these men have been forgiven in some ways, but I think people are starting to reconsider whether they should be forgiven. You take a look at the Roman Polanski case. He was convicted of raping a 13-year-old, and he had her under the influence of alcohol and drugs. He was charged with sodomy and rape, and you have to sit there and take a look, like, he is clearly guilty, and he fled the country. He did not want to serve any jail time. But he's still been able to work in the entertainment industry, and he's been nominated for Oscars, and the actors will go and fly over to Europe and work with him. So clearly there's some sort of forgiveness if you're okay with that. And then you take a look at Woody Allen, and again, A-list stars are always willing to work with Woody, even though, and we all know this, that he went and had an affair with his stepdaughter, who was under 18 at the time, and then it continued on until she was a legal age, and now they are married and they have kids. But come on, it's really creepy. And on top of that, he was then accused of molesting another one of his wife's siblings. And it's really complicated, and it's gross and everything else, but again, actors aren't saying, you know what, I shouldn't be working with him. But now I think people are really going to open their eyes.
No one was immune. Even Joan Collins, who was very famous at the time and was up the lead part in Cleopatra. Cleopatra, she was the front runner for the role. And she said, the director basically said to her, if you really want this role, you have to be nice to me, which in the 1960s meant have sex with me. She didn't, and she lost the role ultimately, of course, to Elizabeth Taylor. But no one is immune. Helen Mirren talked about how one particular director, Michael Winner, treated her like a piece of meat. You go from the most kind of prestigious, powerful, respected leading lady to the youngest ingenue reality star starlet. Everyone at every level seems to have experienced something like this.
The more people come forward, the more it's talked about, the less victims are going to feel like they don't have anywhere to go. And now they can go somewhere, that it's not shameful. It's not something that's going to threaten their entire lives, that they could survive.
The MeToo movement has only been made possible by social media. And even though the movement began in response to the Weinstein allegations, it has become a symbol of strength and unity to all those affected by sexual abuse.
So what was interesting about all of these Harvey stories was that it kind of really fueled a social media frenzy with the hashtag MeToo. And celebrity and TV star Alyssa Milano really came forward and just started pushing the hashtag. And a lot of women just started sharing their stories and saying, this happened to me when I was a kid, this happened to me in college, this happened to me last week. And it was amazing to see that not only was it happening in Hollywood, it was happening in sports, it was happening in the tech industry, it happens in politics. It's not just limited to Los Angeles. It is happening all over the place. And I think women are starting to feel okay about sharing their stories. There's no shame. We're here to support each other. And I'm glad people are paying attention. I think what's helpful in this situation is social media has been a big player when it comes to sharing these stories. you realize that famous women and not so famous women, people from just average walks of life, have experienced the same exact thing, and realizing we're all the same. And I think it's really kind of helped everyone sort of feel better about the situation, and then now take action on how we're not going to have this happen again. And that's what we really saw when it came to that #MeToo hashtag.
It's life-changing. It's life-changing. And we create cultural content, and we know that we have to get our own house in order. Our representation of women and people of color and LGBTQ folks is, frankly, still really poor, and there's a lot of room for improvement. And we have our 50-50 by 2020 push, which is to have 50% women, 50% men across all positions, across our entire industry, including putting women in positions of decision-making. And through our leadership, we hope that the rest of the country can continue to catch fire with this revolution of safer workspaces for everyone.
My greatest fear was that it would be a flash in the pan, we'd move on to the next outrage coming from the White House. Instead, I think it really does feel like something seismic is happening in the way we look at the balance of power, and the way women are excluded from most of the areas at the decision-making level, in the government, in boardrooms, in business, in the media, and the abuses that fall from that imbalance. So that's what the correction is going to be. It's going to be very messy. Somebody said in the Time's Up group, of which I'm a part, that we're building the airplane as we're taking it out down the runway, and that's the mess of it. But I think it's a really, really valuable shift that I feel happening.
And what about the backlash against yourself? Obviously, you stood up. After you made that speech to the Golden Globes, it's like if you put your head above the parapet, people are going to take aim, and it feels like that's what's happening with you now. People saying, Weinstein, she must have known. She must have known.
Yes, I mean, I think I'm taking the hit for an entire group of people who worked with Harvey Weinstein. But the people, what's difficult about this is that it precedes him, these abuses. And there was Roger Ailes, who ran the Fox network. There was Bill O'Reilly, who the Fox paid out $35 million in silence money to women, and in sexual harassment suits. In our country, the settlement of a sexual harassment suit is a legitimate tax deduction. It's built into the way of doing business. This is outrageous, and it is again because of the balance of power that's off.
But
as for me,
knew about these things. You didn't know about these things until now.
Well, the specific, no, here's what, we know that people are jerks. We know that there's a lot of people that are assholes out there. We know there's a lot of people that utilize their position, their gravitas for something other. A lot of times it's riches, a lot of times it's just fun to be storytellers, but a lot of times it's been able to take advantage of the people who are powerless against you. That's without a doubt, that's been part and parcel. And you hear stories and you go like, we all have joined a circus here. And in that circus, there is going to be all sorts of inappropriate messages, inappropriate behavior, and sometimes downright sexual predatory aspects of it. What can come out of all of this is understanding, look, sex and flirting, or whatever you want to call it, affairs of the flesh are never going to go away. But what can go hand in hand with that is the parity that where you work actually reflects the rest of the world. That it's not one gender having control proportionally, when in fact it should be somewhere around 50-50. And when it is 50-50, I think there's going to be board members who are going to say, we are paying out millions of dollars for what exactly? And then you're going to see a difference.
I think the good thing that is happening with the Harvey Weinstein situation is the fact that it is going to be a domino effect. We are going to see women finally saying, you know what? I'm not going to accept this, or I'm going to tell people about what happened to me so they can learn from that experience. And we have seen that start to happen with Kevin Spacey. We've seen allegations against even Ben Affleck. We've seen allegations against Bryan Singer, the director. And we are starting to see it's kind of like a house of cards. It just literally is starting to fall away. And this is, we've heard like 5, 6, 7 stories. I think there's a lot more to come.
He might be exceptional in terms of the years and the numbers of women he targeted, but this is a culture in Hollywood. It extends well beyond Harvey Weinstein. There are dozens of other Harvey Weinsteins in Hollywood.
Look, for every story about Gwyneth Paltrow or Charlize Theron being sexually harassed, there are also stories about all very, very famous leading men also being harassed. A lot of them haven't come forward, so I can't name their names, but I can talk about Kevin Spacey and Anthony Rapp. Anthony Rapp is a young actor, was at the time, in particular, on stage, who worked with Kevin Spacey when Kevin Spacey, according to him, tried to seduce him. Anthony Rapp was one of the first very brave men to come forward and say, it's not just women, this happened to me. I think there are a lot of men who are straight, who are living as straight men, who have been preyed upon by other men in the industry. But because of perhaps embarrassment or confusion or not wanting to come out as having had a gay sexual experience with a man in power, it has caused a certain reluctance on their part. Perhaps they feel they have more to lose in terms of their public image to admit that they slept with a powerful male producer or director in order to get a film role. But virtually all, quite a few of our most famous leading men have been harassed as well.
To check what we say, how we say it, who we say it to, is to put that in the spotlight is a good thing, and as Dylan said, the times they are a-changing.
The fact that somebody that powerful, his career has been completely ruined, and I think that's a real message to anybody who would behave like this, and I think that social media has given everybody a voice and a platform, and everyone realizes that they're not alone, and women realize that they're not alone, and that their voice matters, and their voice can be heard, and that means behavior is going to change.
We've seen the Bill Cosby stories. We've seen the President of the United States tell us exactly what he does. We've seen this go on and on and on. I think we have to get to the point where, and maybe this is it, maybe this is the watershed moment, where we believe women, where they feel safe that they can talk about what they're experiencing.
The real problem is that there are so few women at the table in Hollywood. There are so few women in positions of power behind the scenes. It's still very much a male-dominated industry where women don't have a voice. And as long as women don't have a voice, there are always going to be abuses of power. What we've seen in recent times is women have found a voice. Things like Twitter and social media give someone like Rose McGowan a massive platform in which to express herself. Prior to social media, women didn't have a way to communicate to millions what had happened to them. Outrage, fear, anxiety, complaints. They didn't have a voice. They didn't have a platform. Now everybody has a chance. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has a platform.
It's an important moment and maybe a turning point. I hope it's a tipping point. The fact that all these women have been brave enough to come out and speak, and when you're not in a powerful position and the person that you're telling on, as it were, is, there can be a cost. People can be very critical.
It was just disgusting, and the stories that have come out are heartbreaking. And I really commend the women who have been willing to step forward now and tell their stories. But I think it's important that we not just focus on him and whatever consequences flow from these stories about his behavior, but that we recognize this kind of behavior cannot be tolerated anywhere.
January 22, 2020, Following the jury selection, the trial continues with graphic prosecution statements about the alleged sexual abuse. Being described as a seasoned sexual predator, Weinstein looks weaker with every court appearance. His defense continued to argue that his relationships were always consensual. Further testimonies from Jessica Mann detail a catalog of abuse at the hands of Weinstein, one being he trapped her in a hotel room and raped her. 3 of the 5 charges against Weinstein in court related to Jessica Mann.
You have no idea how hard it is for them, because not only do they have to come forward, not only do they have to go through the grueling, grueling legal battle to get all their stories out and to get checked and cross-checked, but also they have to face him in court. I mean, it's terrifying to face someone who assaulted you. So for them, it's going to be really tough, and even for the other women that are giving testimony, it's going to be tough. And so we just want them to know that they're in there for us, they're in there for all women that have been victimized by a predator.
When he walked out of the car and we were able to stand there in our strength and just look at him and see that he couldn't even bear to make eye contact with us, it was a really powerful moment. It made it very clear that we hold the power here, we hold the strength here, and he really can't hurt us anymore. I'm very hopeful that justice will be served and that he will go to jail for the rest of his life. I think that the evidence is very clear. I think that there's no argument that could be made that he didn't assault these women. So I'm hopeful, but I'm also realistic. I know that it is rare for abusers to see jail time, and I'm prepared for the worst, but I really believe if they handle it properly, if they get a trauma expert in there to talk about the responses that survivors have in the aftermath of an assault, if they make sure that the jury is ready to be impartial. And I know we keep hearing this line in the press from Donna Rotano that he's not going to get a fair trial. Survivors don't get a fair trial. There's a lot of misconceptions about being a survivor of sexual violence, and there's a lot of victim blaming that happens. So I'm much more concerned about that. You know, he's had so many opportunities. He has all the money in the world to hire the best lawyers. What we need right now is people who will listen. And I hope that if he sees justice, you know, if he goes to jail, this will be a landmark. It will help change the shape of the criminal justice system. It will help survivors feel like they actually get heard and people actually understand the process and the experience of being a survivor.
Courage is contagious, and I hope that the courage in my clients resonates all around the world so women know that change is possible.
He just kept repeating, but I'm innocent, but I'm innocent, I'm innocent. How could this happen in America?
As one of the silence breakers, I stand in solidarity with the brave survivors who will take the stand against Harvey Weinstein in this trial. While the emotion of the day runs high, I join these other brave women who were also harmed by Harvey Weinstein to say, we aren't going anywhere.
The trial means so much to so many, but it will mean the most to the brave women testifying and to all of us silence breakers. I thank those testifying for standing, not just for themselves, but for all of us who will never have even one day in court.
Why is it so important for you to be here?
It's important because there's over 100 women who spoke out against Harvey Weinstein. You know, he's only being brought up on charges by 2, but there's a huge group of us. So we wanted to show solidarity with those women and support them, and also show that, you know, it's not just the 2 of them. This is way bigger.
I think that the fact that we've got a man this powerful to what has happened today, to see Lady Justice staring him down, it feels like a huge win already. And I can't really think of that outcome yet because I'm too hopeful. But I really pray that we will see great strides. We will continue to make strides because, you know what, we've heard the voices of women and other abused people, and we just won't be silenced anymore.
And you had said that you weren't going to come today. What made you change your mind?
The other survivors. I'm here for them, and I'm here for the women in court. and I am of service. That's what I was put on this earth to do, to be of service. In my own weird way, I am a volunteer. So I'm here volunteering. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here,
Rose. So, do you worry about what those who are the victims in this case are going to have to go through by being in a trial?
They are going to be so traumatized by going through this trial.
February 13th, 2020. Donna Rotano makes her closing statement that Weinstein has been innocent the entire time, hoping the jury will acquit him of what she deems to be questionable allegations.
Harvey, I think, is very confused. I think he feels very sad. I think he believed he had relationships with women that were different than the way they are now characterizing them. And if you look at their conversations via email, it would be realistic to believe that. If you looked at the way Jessica spoke about him on recorded conversations with other people, it would be realistic to believe that. If you look at Jessica's testimony when she said, yes, I was manipulative of him. Yes, I made him think these things. How did he know? That's the question. So I think he sits there very confused. It's very easy to say all these horrible things about him. But I think if you look at the circumstances in real time and you say, wait a minute, what was really going on? It's easy to come in here now and make a show and come with your lawyers and run to Good Morning America. It's easy to do that. We don't know what happened in those rooms. But what we do know is all of the circumstances that surrounded it.
Here is just the last part of what Mimi said in her victim impact statement. She said, I've never felt vengeful, and going into this initially, I didn't even feel anger. I just felt sad. Sad for myself, sad for everyone he hurt, and I even felt sad for him for having done this to himself. But I have observed an indifference, a lack of remorse, a lack of acknowledgement, a lack of awareness and self-awareness by the defendant throughout this process that has made me feel anger, that has left me concerned that he is completely disconnected from the gravity of the crime that he committed against me and the impact it's had. I can only hope that whatever sentence the court sees fit is long enough for Harvey Weinstein to acknowledge what he's done and to be truly sorry.
On February 18th, 2020, the jury began deliberating. Judge Burke reminds them that to convict, they must be sure of the defendant's guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. The jury spent 5 tense days in deliberation. When they emerged, they declared Harvey Weinstein guilty. The disgraced former movie mogul was convicted of sexual assault and rape. He's acquitted of first-degree rape and 2 counts of predatory sexual assault. However, he still faces up to 25 years in prison. Weinstein is ordered to remain in custody until his sentencing.
It is a new era. The MeToo movement has educated us all about how pervasive this kind of behavior it is and how unacceptable it is. And today, the jury put an exclamation point on that in the most significant way possible. Doug and I were in court as we saw Harvey Weinstein being remanded into police custody. Harvey Weinstein is exactly where he should be now, behind bars. Harvey Weinstein has hurt dozens and dozens of people by his sexual, predatory, rapist, violent behavior. And today, there can be no other discussion other than Harvey Weinstein is exactly where he should be.
I feel that at least this is a positive outcome, and it's like giving the right example for people to believe that right now there would not be any wrongdoing to victims that, decide to come forward with these situations. So I really feel this is a start. And from here, we have to move forward into not having this situation to happen anymore. And this is what I'm working on.
For the first time, I can say I feel
a sense of happiness, I guess. Because this isn't a happy circumstance to be that we're all here for. But I feel joyous with what Judge Burke decided, and I'm grateful to the jurors and the prosecuting team, the DA's office, and everybody involved, and to all the supporters. Thank you. I hope that the sentence sends a clear message that times have changed and that more women need to speak out for themselves and that men and women need to speak out for each other. We need to show self-love and empathy to overcome centuries of illogical thinking that has normalized the sexual mistreatment of women. This is hopefully just the beginning, and the conversation must continue, and I thank you guys for continuing the conversation.
This is what justice looks like. 20 plus 3 years sentence handed down by Judge Burke this morning after compelling arguments by the prosecution and after arguments by the defense. And most importantly, after heartfelt victim impact statements, one by my client Mimi and the other by the victim Jessica.
I am very proud of them. I really know what it means going through traumas and opening up scars again, but they did it for helping others, and I'm really proud of them.
A reporter asked me yesterday, how do you think Harvey Weinstein will be known now? What do you think his legacy will be? And I said, well, it certainly won't be for the movies that he made. It will be as a convicted serial rapist.
Today is truly a landmark moment for survivors of rape and sexual assault, in that the public is seeing that men, even a man as powerful and famous as Weinstein, will be held accountable for their abuse of women. It is also a watershed moment, a historic leap for the MeToo movement that Tarana Burke began in 2006 and that took another step forward in October of 2017. When my sister survivors and I began to come forward with our stories of Weinstein's predatory behavior, now we know that if we dare to speak, there is a far greater chance we will be heard and our abusers will be punished.
This is a great day, not just for all of us up here. Many of us didn't think this day would come. We were actually really nervous and holding our breath because there was a very good chance that he would walk. The fact that he hasn't shows that things are changing. This is a new day. The jury saw through all of the BS and the lies that his defense team tried to put out there. You know, his defense lawyer called the Me Too movement, it was out of control. It's run amok. It was a witch hunt. We can't just believe all women. We have to try them in a court of law. Well, they did. And the jury believed the women.
Harvey, you messed with the wrong women. We will see you here in Los Angeles, where hopefully your conviction will leave you in jail for life. And to the rest of the 4% of the predators who create 91% of the problem, we are coming for you.
He's convicted of a violent felony against my client. He got 20 years for criminal sexual assault of my client, Mimi. Potentially 3 years, it's not 100% clear, for rape in the third degree against Jessica, whom I do not represent. If you are a sexual predator and you are confused, all you have to do is remember this: 20 plus 3 years. And part of the consideration in handing down a sentence by a court to a person convicted of felonies is to consider the deterrent effect. So for all those who are still preying on women, who want to engage in the high risk taking of harming women, and thinking you'll get away with it, that gamble is likely not to pay off for you anymore. And if you're a high-profile figure, don't expect anything but equal justice. Don't expect more than equal justice under the law.
At long last, justice has been served. No longer can the industry tolerate this kind of behavior. The truth is out, and it is being heard.
Thank you.